as ever they want. Maybe it is used for the marketing purpose, or maybe it is used for some malicious purpose. Definitely, it's a very serious concern, and moreover, the Supreme Court in the recent guidelines they have said that the privacy is a fundamental right of the citizen, and in pursuance of that, whatever the efforts are being made, that is quite appreciable. But definitely, that also has got a lot of advantages and disadvantages. In the later part, I would like to share my views on how even the data privacy or the data protection bill also uh, will not solve this problem. Actually, in fact, it will be creating more confusion. It will be increasing a lot of cyber crimes also. But definitely, when you bring such kind of bill, or when we talk about the protection of the data, by and large, it is really very good, and it is highly essential in this particular uh, scenario, in this particular era, and so that at least we should be able to protect the data of the students from getting it misused. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question for you, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
today children are also complicit in cyberbullying and cyber stalking. So how can we address this problem, sir?
I mean, before answering this question, in fact, I just wanted to say certain few things on
Yes, sir.
the
Yes, sir.
same
Sure.
data protection bill, because we always talk about advantages of data protection bill, but I would like to say certain negative of the data protection bill. See, the first data protection bill which has come was basically in EU, GDPR, and following that, in Indian context, we are getting a general data protection bill, which is under scrutiny, and the bill has come, but it is to be enacted into an act. Uh, in fact, if we go by the uh, by the act, it says that there will be a competent authority which will be keeping a check, or which will be enforcing that all the small and big companies, they comply this particular protection bill. Now now when this act comes into the picture, all small and big company has to comply to that. That is number one. Second thing is, earlier, like, suppose if I'm a cyber criminal, and if I steal some data, if I breach into some data, I had no mechanism by which I can monetize that data whichever I have breached. Only way out was that I will sell it to somebody, or I'll post it in some dark web, and if somebody is interested, they can sell. But as per the new data protection bill or the act, I mean, there will be, as per the act, if your data is breached, then there will be competent authority will fine you, or there will be some legal action against you. So once your data is breached, then the motivation level of the cyber criminal will be more to breach your data, and the incidence of ransomware will be increasing too high. Second thing is, the small and big company, like, the big educational industries, they also have to follow the guidelines. Smaller one also has to follow the guidelines. The bigger companies may have resources, they can appoint officials, they can invest money in those compliance, but the smaller companies may not. Then it could lead to some kind of a war, internal war. If I want to shut down your business, I may breach into your data, and the competent authority, maybe after 2 3 times slapping you, fines, your business might come down. Yeah, it will be like competition war kind of a thing. That will increase the tendency. The one thing which we rely upon in any data protection is the consent of the person. Like, even in GDPR, even in our particular bill also, it says that a individual will give a consent before he gives the data, or his data will be used. So we should understand that See, consent, no people, like even after GDPR also, what has happened is when you open any website, they ask you the consent every time, and you always give the consent because it's a normal tendency of the people. They just want to have an immediate gain. Like if I'm downloading an app, so my interest is only to download that because that is an immediate gain. If the app is actually asking me consent, I will definitely give. I will not go for a long term drawbacks or the long term disadvantages which is going to happen. I will definitely give a consent. So giving a consent is, if that is the only criteria, then the problem may not get sorted out. So we have to implement it in a way that there is a check. At the same time, this is not misused also. Coming, what was your the question actually?
Sir, today, uh, as we are also in the digital age, our children are also in online learning. So children are also complicit in the same crimes like cyberbullying and cyber stalking. So how can we address this problem, sir? Should parenting be brought into focus, or can we teach cybersecurity ethics to children? What should we do?
Uh, if you ask me, generally when I entered into the policing service, so initially I was very much boast. I used to feel confident saying that it is the police who is controlling the crime in the society, or it is the police which is maintaining law and order or maintains the society into peace. But over the period you start learning that it's not the policing. It's basically every individual. It's about the socialization of every individual. Why you and me don't commit crime? Not because of the police is there or you'll go to the jail. It's basically you are socialized in a way where you know what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, and you don't commit crime because there is some kind of a social control uh, which prevents you from committing a crime. Like you may think that okay, it will bring a bad name to me, bad name to the family. So that is a social control which actually prevents a person from getting into the crime. There are very minor people, very small percentage of a people who has that delinquency and they have a tendency to commit a crime. For those people only the police is there. Similarly, when you correlate this physical real world with the digital world, same thing is applicable here. See, now we have already started living in a digital world. Like you, if anybody thinks that we are not living in a digital world, he may be in a very wrong misconception. Like you just take anything. When the moment you get up, the way you communicate with the people using internet, the way you gather information, the way you read, with the way you study, the way you travel by using GPS, the way you chat with the friends, the way you book your tickets, uh, d- uh, you know, do banking, financing, or making the bill, ordering food. Everything has become digital platforms, and all the real threats and risk or the crimes which was existing in a physical world has also shifted to the digital platform. But when we have already started living in a digital platform, but our socialization, whether children, we are not socialized in the same way the way we were socialized in a real physical world. So we have to have a digital socialization in the form of an education. They should be taught what is good and what is bad on net. What are the risks? What are the precautionary measures? How to keep yourself safe. The parents should also understand what are the warning signs and symptoms by which they can identify that children are or is victimized. But the problem is these particular digital crimes is a neo crime. Even the parents do not know what to teach, how to teach, because they themselves are aware. So here the state should take an initiative, and they should bring in some kind of an education or some kind of a a learning system, or the way we can socialize the student. I personally feel that is one solution. Definitely, in coming days, the cyber crime is going to be increasing. in a very massive scale. And unless and until this education or digital socialization does not happen, it will be really very difficult for even the police to get to actually control this. Another one issue which I wanted to say, that not only children should get needs of awareness from not getting victimized, but they should also learn all this in order to keep themselves safe from not being an accused also, because so many times the children think that okay, they can do anything. They might commit some, they might do something online without knowing that it's illegal. They think that okay, I can create a fake profile, I can harass somebody, or I can cyberbully somebody. uh, Unaware, unknowingly, they become a victim. So for both the purpose, awareness is very much important. Digital parenting is very much important. But the question is how that digital parenting can happen. Parents, they themselves, maybe even we have interacted so many tech savvy parents also, but they themselves also do not know actually what to be taught, how to be taught. There's a big dilemma, like whether to give a gadget or not. Not giving the gadget is also not a solution, because you just cannot deny the advantages what children have because of the technology. At the same time, you're scared, you have an apprehensions also. But this has to be attended actually.
So, in fact, I quite agree with this thing that children do not know where to draw the line. I mean, where is the point that a crime may be committed and where it remains a joke? That line is a very thin one.
In fact, this particular thing is it is asked so many times.
Yeah.
How do we identify that what we should do and what we should not do? A basic principle you should adopt. I mean, first of all, if you aware yourself, that is well and good. But in case suppose if you are not aware of all the dangers and all the rest, one basic principle everybody should follow, that anything which you cannot do it in a real physical world, please do not attempt on the digital world. As simple as that. Like for example, if I want to in a real physical world, I will never share my some obscene photo or nude photo to somebody else. Then why you should share on a digital platform? In a real physical world, I will not go and abuse somebody. Obviously people are there who will abuse, but then you are ready to get back. So similarly, you should not abuse on a digital platform. In a real physical world, you will not give a personal information to somebody, or you will not give away your money without thinking. You think so many, whether this person is a cheat or he is going to commit a fraud and all. But in a digital platform, you are actually, you believe the social engineering or the way the cyber criminals uh, make everything. So the tendency of becoming a victim is higher in a digital platform. So even that basic thing, if you follow, uh, I think that also will keep lot many people safe. Despite all this, I mean, the way the cyber criminals engineer those crimes and the frauds, your brain actually gets shut down. I mean, I may be taking a session here, but maybe I remember one or two incidents where I myself, all my knowledge, all my awareness, or I mean precautionary measures get shut down, because it is it is made in that way. Like for example, if I get a mail now from your particular company saying that okay, please attend the webinar tomorrow, and if that is a spoofed email or if that's a phishing email, because then I may not apply my safety precautions, because I know that you had contacted me and I'm expecting your mail. And if in the meanwhile, if cyber criminal sends me a mail, I will definitely click the link. I will not apply my brain. So but at the same time, we should be very alert, and that alertness should be there actually, and that should be strongly feeded in the individual. Like for example, I'll tell you, I think your parents also might have told you that when you are traveling alone, please do not eat something which is given by the stranger when you're traveling in the train. I think everybody's parents might have told. Now, do you eat? I mean, that is embedded in our engineered actually. The same way, uh, on a digital platform also certain things has to be embedded in our brain, and it should be actually genetically modified because of by repeated instructions, repeated awareness.
Yeah. Sir, I have another question to you, sir. Sir, how far are our law enforcement agencies prepared to handle this emerging threat? And what are the challenges we face today, sir?
Uh, See, when you compare with the normal criminals and the cyber criminals, there are certain advantages to the cyber criminals, and parallelly, there are disadvantages to the victims. Like, let me talk about the advantages of the cyber criminal. The number one is they can impersonate, they can take a technological cover and they can hide their location. They can be at any place in the world and they can commit a crime. They can they can attempt crime without being physically in proximity, and they can target many people at one time. So these are certain advantages, and there are certain disadvantages to the victim, in the sense many of the victims are unaware that whatever experience they have undergone online, whether that amounts to a crime or not. I'm not talking about the financial fraud. Financial fraud, everybody will come to the police station and they will give a complaint. But there are so many other types of harassment, trolling, blackmailing, extortion, all such kind of a thing. uh, People are actually not aware that whatever they have faced now, whether that amounts to the crime or not, so they do not come up and give a complaint. So the statistics, there's a huge difference. I will, if you ask me how many cases are registered, it will be very less, but actual occurrence maybe it may be huge. That is one disadvantage. Second disadvantage is that so many times the harassment is actually has got this, has social stigma attached to it. So people do not have they don't want to come out with like, there are certain honey trap cases. There somebody is blackmailing, or especially the female teenage students are facing this. Statistics says that about 21 percentage of Indian teenagers who commit suicide is somehow connected to online harassments. I'm talking about those cases. So there are advantages and disadvantages. Now let us come to the capabilities of the police. See, there are certain difficulties in investigation, in the sense it's not so easy when in collecting the evidences, because the evidence is placed or is available at various platforms which is not stationed in India. We have to we have to be dependent upon various big IT giants like Facebook or Instagram and all, and it takes time. Sometimes it may be crime in India, but according to them it is not a crime. They will not remove the content and all. So those difficulties are there. Second thing is, as I told, jurisdiction issues will be there. If the criminal is sitting across the border, maybe it will be very difficult for us to go and nab him. Third thing is even the law. Our law is actually, there are certain drawbacks in our law which does not address us complete all the problems. In fact, the IT Act, when it was enacted in 2000, it was basically concentrated. If you have read it, it is more concentrated on e-commerce, how to make the business electronically safe, and it is talking about that. Only in 2008 there was an amendment in IT Act where I think there was some incident of DPS school one, which actually created a lot of sensation across the country. So there was some amendment which in certain things were added up, but still so many things are yet to be addressed in the law. So investigation also, there's a lot of difficulty. Legally also we have certain limitations. At the same time, obviously this digital crimes is ever growing. It's not like when I entered into service 16 years back, law, IPC, crime, everything is stationary, static. I learned at that time, and I can do my job till I retire. But it's not like cybercrime is not like that. Even if I learn it once, the very moment next month or next year the entire cybercrime scenario changes. So I have to update myself regularly. So updation is very difficult. The police officers or the police team, they cannot update it so fast as compared to the way the criminals um, devise or use the mechanism, I mean, change their mechanism on a day-to-day basis. So these are all the drawbacks, but lot of efforts are being done in this connection. But as I told, uh, the digital socialization, digital awareness is the key. Where otherwise we all will be flooded with lot of cases, and handling that will be very difficult. So some precautionary measures has to be taken at the individual level also.
Thank you, sir. We now we would now like to introduce you all to the Khan. He is the founder of Escan
Thank
Robotics
you, everyone.
and Peak
Thank you.
Research Engine. Over to you, the Khan. Will you please tell us about what are the solutions we have today?
So, as I was listening to Mr. Sanjay, it's really nice talking to you and listening to you, Mr. Sanjay, and thank you for joining us for in our company. What we're trying to deal with, like the kind of problem he was trying to, convey here. What we feel is like we have provided kind of a lot of product line that can make people aware about like how they can protect their privacy in terms of when they are searching, browsing, or messaging someone online. Can you hear me? Hello, hello,
Yes,
hello.
sir. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is like, as you can see, we are dependent on lots of countries right now. That's what I'm trying to say. And when we are dependent on some other countries, when we don't have that, as you said, jurisdiction comes, and when you say that, like they say this is not something their problem, so they might not gonna remove it. But when you have something that is own and something that is going to be happen, then it becomes easier for the own government and the own people, those who are working, to make sure that everything, I mean, working on the right track, we can protect that properly. So right now, what we are dependent on, it's something sitting somewhere else. That's what I'm trying to say. And the whole idea, I mean, from a company I came up with, it's about like to bring something that is for own people, and that is for the people those who understand that even if they are not understanding the problems what data privacy are bringing in the market right now, but still even they don't understand, but we have to take care of it. And once I'm if I talk about we have to take care of it, then I have the whole ecosystem what we are came up with, the whole ecosystem where you are searching, where you are browsing, you are communicating with people, you are, I mean, editing something, whatever you're trying to deal with online, or you are running a business, we're gonna have to take care of it. So, for example, when it comes to in terms of education system, still we are facing the problem because even in the education system, the kind of services or product they are using, it's quite different. Um, just 1 second. Yeah, it's quite different from the in perspective of the data privacy that we are dealing with today. That's what I'm trying to say. So we have that kind of solution that can help you in terms of like not to lose your privacy and not to lose your data as well. In terms of whenever you are trying to deal with any sort of students information, or maybe personal information, or maybe you can say like a business information. So on that point of time, it would be much easier for each of us and for all the governments as well. Even if we don't have our data protection act, as he said already, but still we care about the people's privacy, because if we're not going to care about the people's privacy, it might going to lead to somewhere where other country might going to save themselves, but we're not going to saving themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is the main typical situation that we are going to face in upcoming years. If I haven't came out with this product line, I shouldn't have been talking to you guys today. That's what I'm trying to say. And for that reason, what I believe is, if something is coming up with the quite different aspects that can change the perspective of using internet, then you have to come up and support each other, that we can bring the idea in front of the market. And once people gonna start understanding it, it would be much easier for the normal users as well to understand the real difference, why we should use any product. I'm not talking about just my product, but someone that is offering that is taking care of your privacy or like security, that has to be on top, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So I would love to hear your feedback, Mr. Sanjay. As you were saying about like how things was going on in terms of like if there is a cross-border impact, then how we can help in there. You know what I'm saying? Hmm.
Uh, Actually, I was wondering when you were saying that you will be providing a solution by which the data. See,
Uh-huh.
the data breach basically happens from two ways. Like if
Hmm.
my data, if I have logged if I have provided a data to certain person or a certain company or any
Hmm.
educational institution, like last year, this Unacademy was there was a data breach in Unacademy. Then there was another one data breach in Scholara. One there is a one platform where data breaches data breach happens on two ways. One way is that okay, the company or the holder of the data is unaware, or I mean, some criminals have actually breached into his system and stolen the data.
Hmm.
Another way is if I am the holder, I myself am
Hmm.
trying to monetize the data which is available. Most of
Hmm.
the time what happens, the data is being monetized by the holder of the person, so then your data, your product will not be useful if the
So
holder
you're getting me wrong here. I will stop you for a second.
yeah.
The way we are offering the product line, it's something where, so for example, as you said, someone used someone's product, right? And then after they got data leaked or maybe breached by someone else. But what we're doing here, when you are now moving from one product to another product, then we're not gonna let this happen, first of all. So we have the ecosystem. We don't come up with a one product line. So for example, like today, what you do when you search online anything, I'm not talking about like on a banking product line or anything. I'm just talking about like searching anything on the internet. When you search something, on the same moment you are losing your data. You know what I'm trying to say. But we are having a solution from there to the point where you're going to share someone. That's what I'm trying to say. So when you are selling to someone, then you are already thinking of like if he is going to protect me or not. So either it's your friends or family or anyone, he might not gonna be aware of like if he is sharing their information to maybe the wrong person maybe, and maybe they are not aware of like if they're gonna lose their phone, they might gonna lose your data as well. But what we're doing here is like from the time being you start searching, the time being you start browsing, the time being you start sharing your information or maybe messaging someone, we're gonna be helping from there. So it's the core problem we are trying to solve from the beginning of it. So for example, if you're saying about like you are running a whole business and you asking me like you might gonna share data. So for example, if you are running an organization, right? And if you want to use our product line, on that point of time, what's gonna happen is like you're gonna have, I mean, we're gonna provide you an infrastructure that's gonna help you to protect the whole data and the ecosystem that you're getting from your own business that is not going to be revealed by someone else. But what happens sometime when you're using a typically different kind of products together, then the sharing time you have to get the problem that you just talked about. So where we are coming from is something that can just lead the situation where we don't have to worry about those things. And when it comes about like I talk about data privacy and security, but I also talk about like if there is a someone wrong person and he is trying to affect someone, then we're gonna be the first people, those who are gonna be talk about like why he done it. So we're gonna be tracking these people as well. But according to our company, we care about right to privacy, right to freedom, and right to information. Means like we're gonna be providing you the accurate information that not gonna manipulate your mindset in terms of privacy. Means like we're gonna be taking care of your privacy as well in terms of data privacy and security as well. Similarly, when it comes about the freedom, means like you have the, I mean, as a user, you have all the capacity in your own hand that you can customize everything you want, that you searching, browsing, or messaging, or communicating with anyone. So these are the basic, components that we try to put in our product line that can help people to understand like they're not gonna lose anything when once they are starting using it. Because today, what we are flooded with in the market, that is not going to help them out. That's for sure. And that's why the response I got from you and why you saying that, because I can understand where this whole thing coming from. You know, so I'm trying to, and why the mindset of people are just going in the same around everywhere, because they haven't seen the kind how a company can protect if they want to. But people don't want to, because they think if they're gonna protect, why they're gonna protect it? Because I mean, someone having a founder background, they might not gonna use the same application, but they're gonna use the. I mean, they're gonna ask their customer to use the application. You know what I'm trying to say? So these things happen, sort, and that's the reason behind it. So we try to take an initiative that can help people to understand why. I mean, it's important, and how we can help people to understand, like, we're not gonna let you lose their editor. That's the whole point, I would say. So I mean, please tell me why you getting from my points, if I have clarified myself or not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, we would now like to move on to Navi Vijay Shankar, sir, who is the chairman of FDPPI, to share his insights on the topic. Sir, you are muted, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Kumar and Mr. Kar. Okay.
Okay, thank
Glad to know that you are into various kinds of solutions for privacy protection. Um, whether it's a browser or let us say a messenger or a search engine. Of course, I have to study a little more on what you are doing to be really able to say how exactly it is trying to address the issues of
you.
identity theft. So we started discussing the cyber crimes and privacy. When we look at cyber crimes and privacy together, we are actually looking at one kind of cyber crimes, which is the identity theft. Now,
That's true.
in terms of law, we had our Information Technology Act 2000 and the 2008 version, which had also many data protection related issues under Section 43 capital A. From there, now we are discussing a very focused legislation, which is the Personal Data Protection Bill. Of course, that is only going to replace the 43A, which means that the data protection law, which is present in India for the last, say, from 2009 onwards, when the 2008 Act came. Okay, so 12 years we are into data protection law, and it is only today that people are talking of PDPB, forgetting that 12 years we are already into the law. Now, there can be some changes in the sense that there will be a new regulator. Fine, the regulator will focus only on this, so he will be more effective than the adjudicator who was already there, who had the powers to be a sort of a judicial authority for the state. ITA 2000 and the 2008 version never failed to provide adequate powers to the adjudicator, and the police always had the powers under Section 66 to punish any kind of unauthorized access or diminishing the value of information residing inside a computer. A very broad definition of a cyber crime was there in the Information Technology Act. Problem is that we never recognized the strength of Information Technology Act, and we were always blaming that we don't have a Data Protection Act, we don't have a Data Protection Act. And probably we opened our eyes only when somebody in Europe said that we are going to have a GDPR. Of course, GDPR is also an extension of the earlier data protection regulations. At least from 1995, data protection regulations are there in all the European countries. So that is the scenario which we are having today. Now, going forward, now there are a couple of things which we have to think of here, particularly one is the application service providers. Say, for example, you are, in your note you are talking of edtech, that is education online, which has actually increased in the because of the COVID. In fact, my own cyber law college was perhaps India's first online education institution way back in 2000. Okay, I adopted online at that time because of the economic reasons, because there was no expenditure involved in going online and conducting a class, which was what was a strength for me. Now, once this COVID came, now colleges and institutions are getting into online with hundreds of students um, joining from their own equipment. See, this concept of BYOD now has got expanded with everybody from his mobile or from a laptop is joining the educational institution's server. And that is where risk is there for the institution first. Okay, institution which allows remote logging in to any application from an untested or environment, that is one risk. The other kind of risk is, of course, to the student themselves. Okay, because the students could be phished, they could be perhaps getting some kind of allurement in terms of a software which has a malicious code in it. That kind of issues the students have to face. One more problem which has come is through the students, cyber criminals are trying to access the parents of the students. For example, the students may be using the same laptop which the father is using, or the mobile which may contain, say, bank details. So criminals are targeting the parents of the students through the facility which we are having. So in terms of security, we need to look at not only the privacy of students. So the student privacy is one aspect, but the security of the organization or the platform which is providing the online education, and the third parties, like as I told you, the parents who will be unwittingly drawn into it. There have been cases in recent days where credit card information of parents have been used by children without knowing the consequences, kind of a thing. Now, in terms of solutions, one thing we always talk about is awareness. But awareness, we have been talking, it is a necessary condition but not sufficient. See, however we speak, see, technology is so complicated that criminals are always able to hoodwink the users. And that is the reason why even say educated people who know about crimes also get trapped into cyber crimes. So awareness alone will not be the solution for prevention of cyber crimes. I have always believed that the responsibility for cybercrime prevention has to be taken by the tech companies, the intermediaries. See, we always look at the police to catch the criminal after the theft has taken place. But it has been facilitated because there was a zero-day vulnerability in the software, or when there is a, for example, you take a bank fraud. No bank fraud can take place unless the criminal has an account in another bank. So there is a collecting bank which may be in Jamtara or wherever it is. Unless the criminal is allowed by another bank there to open an account and collect the proceeds, my money cannot go out. Now, the ecosystem, if you look at it, crimes are being facilitated because we talk of security on the one hand, but we are lax on imposing the security in terms of the collecting bankers, in terms of the technology providers. Information Technology Act has got a provision for punishing the intermediaries. Now, unfortunately, including the police, they have always been hesitant to go after the intermediaries. See, if you take the cases like these drugs, we are more concerned about the drug peddlers than perhaps the drug consumers. Likewise, in the case of cyber crimes, we have to ensure that the people who, by their negligence, allow crimes to happen in their platform, they should be put on guard. This is where the new Data Protection Act, at least in the civil liability side, tries to impose large penalties. Of course, all the criminal aspects of data protection will remain with the Information Technology Act. So police can still book people under Section 66 even for a data theft or something like that. But there is a financial disincentive for organizations for not taking adequate precautions for data protection. That is the compliance-led, you can say, regulatory regime which will be coming up with the Data Protection Act. Cybercrime law, the Information Technology Act, was not exactly compliance-driven. It was that when somebody has a cause of action to go to a police and file a complaint, and the police will have time to actually take up the case, or the adjudicator has time to take up the case, then only the case will come up to the table of negotiation. Then the intermediary will realize that, okay, if I have been negligent and I may have to suffer a loss. But what Data Protection Act is going to put is the compliance part. It is putting upfront. That is, a company which is not compliant with what is reasonable security practice, whether or not a breach has happened, whether or not a person has suffered a loss, that company will have a possibility of being fined, say 5 crores, 15 crores, or 4% of the turnover, or whatever is that. This is going to change this psychology of intermediaries. That is, they can no longer say that I will look after it when things go wrong. Well, let something go wrong, let somebody go to the police today for 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees. No victim is likely to pursue the case. So, just as it has happened many times in the past, salami attacks, take a small amount from hundreds of people, nobody is going to go to the police, nobody is going to go to the adjudicator. So the cyber criminals are happy picking up small amounts from a different a number of people. But the intermediaries are the persons who have to be actually punished heavily if they have to be compliant. Compliance, for example, there is something called adaptive authentication, which every bank is supposed to take into account. Now, if I have got an account from Bangalore and for my account there is a login from Nigeria, how can the bank make allow that transaction to happen? They cannot say that my password is there, therefore I have passed. That is escaping from the responsibility of the bankers. And I have been telling all the law enforcement people, please book cases on the bankers. I have been an ex-banker, but when bankers are negligent, of course, some of you are aware that the first case of Uma Shankar versus ICICI Bank was fought by me, and two courts actually made the bank pay the phishing claim. Now, even at that time, I went to the police in Chennai and said, here is a civil judicial authority who has decided that ICICI Bank is liable. Why don't you pursue your case against the bank? Because intermediaries need to cooperate with the law enforcement for evidence. If you don't threaten them with consequences, they will not give you evidence. And without evidence, you can never win a case in Indian courts. So the intermediary liability is a very strong point in Information Technology Act, but not being used. So I hope in the Data Protection Act, the Data Protection Authority, he is not bound by this some of the restrictions which are there in the pursuance of a civil liability or a criminal liability. If he feels that compliance is not adequate in a particular organization, he can go ahead and fine. But he need not have to wait for somebody to lose money to actually put a fine. You remember that is going to be a very significant difference in the marketplace, that without a data breach, if a substantive fine can be made. So we are looking forward to this act, the Data Protection Authority, who will understand this, and perhaps the situation will improve. In the meantime, of course, protecting the individual victims of cyber crimes is everybody's responsibility. Now, you take, for example, phishing of websites or say the emails. Now, if I get an email, a fraudulent email from Google, can I ask Google what is the IP address from which I have got it? Now, way back when we solved the first case in cyber crimes, way back in 2008, the Suhaskatti case, it took only 5 minutes for us to actually locate the IP address. And in one particular case with the police, we went and caught hold of the person even before he came out of the computer. Today, Google will protect the IP address of the criminal, and to get the IP address resolution, you have to have a CRPC notice issued and take another 3 months. To get a CRPC notice issued, I have to get an FIR, convince the police inspector that there is a case. It will never happen. So the so-called privacy in terms of email providers, which also extends to websites. Now, when you have a phishing website, the first thing we used to do was to go and see who is information so that police can immediately catch that person. Now, all the registrars of domain names, they happily give privacy protection. What are they giving? They are giving only the hiding place for criminals. Now, police have to go after those people and say that this is not privacy. Privacy is protecting an individual from misuse of his information. But if I am actually booking a domain name, protecting my identity as a domain name owner should not be part of the privacy. Now, if GoDaddy says it is privacy, I will not tell you who is the owner, and that company, that particular domain name is sending you phishing emails, we are not protecting the ecosystem. That is one thing. Other thing which we are failing to do in law enforcement is we are not curbing the criminals from enjoying the proceeds of crime. See, no crime will be curbed unless you make it difficult for the thief to encash on his what he has stolen. So today, ransomware succeeds because you have got what is called a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. Now, the government of India has not been able to ban the cryptocurrency. So we are letting the entire the criminal world, dark web, to actually work on the basis of the currency. If you block that currency, then all criminals have to go through banks to encash their crimes. At least we will create some trail for on which crimes can be checked. This is something which I would request Mr. Sanjay Kumar to take it up with the appropriate authorities, that just as we need to attack the cyber crime at the root level, one is the intermediaries, software people who release software with zero-day vulnerabilities. It is disgusting to see how can zero-day vulnerability software can be in the marketplace, actually making the victims of that. And this kind of encashment of cyber proceeds, the crime proceeds through bitcoins kind of a thing, needs to be addressed. We have to recognize that solution will not be there by having 100 more awareness classes. I can do, we have been doing thousands of awareness classes. We have to again there make the education institutions, schools responsible, not the parents. Schools should take the responsibility. If I am teaching coding in at the PUC level, I have to tell them how not to use the coding. So there are certain things which we have failed to do, and therefore we are sitting in a situation now that cybercrime is the biggest crime in the whole world, bigger than the drugs. And I think we need to do something in this respect. Okay. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I will answer. Otherwise, we will try to hear.
Mr. Shankar, I want to stop you, Satyaki, just 1 second, please. I was listening to him as well, and the kind of understanding what I have got, Mr. Shankar, I mean, I really apologize if I bother you, but I really wanted to understand the kind of queries you have raised right now. You know, so I'm trying to say, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, like, as you said, the government and police has to involve in that situation where the intermediary companies has to, they can take action against it. That's what I'm trying to say, as you said. But you tell me, when there is a company sitting in somewhere else, how are you going to have that kind of jurisdiction that can get there and bring the data that you're requiring for? So for that reason, we need an Atmanirbhar company that is running in our own country and that can help police to bring that kind of situation when there is a wrong things happening. So when I talk about why we are here in the market, the reason behind we are here in the market, because we are a company that belongs to India. And when it comes to, when we belong to India and when we have each and every aspect, when we talk about the identity theft, that's what I'm trying to say. What happens in the first go, when you search in something, the day at the time being you start search something, the same moment you lose your data. And the same time when you say about like you processing an email to someone else or sending an email, you're just losing your data, right? But you need that kind of solution or product line that can stop you doing that, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So the reason behind why I started this whole, event concept, because people didn't know about us in a way that what we are offering you. You know what I'm trying to say? It's still the kind of queries I'm getting from people, every single people, like from last few days. The same thing. It's like they are not understanding what we are trying to deal with. Because if you can imagine, if you're not gonna share your data to someone else, if you're gonna expect in a police that comes to us and they ask us like why this guy did something wrong, and I believe data privacy is only good for right people, not for the wrong people, right? Am I correct? Yeah. Because if you are a wrong person, you are not just affecting yourself. I mean, it's affecting 20 or 30 people more. You got a point. And for that scenario, what happens is like when it comes about searching, you are sitting somewhere and someone is searching somewhere else, right? Similarly, you're sending a message, you have depended on someone else. Now you can tell me, how can you imagine that? And you're, I mean, whatever the social media, whatever you're using right now, these all are coming from somewhere else. Same problem is happening state police or maybe the government, I mean, government of India, as I believe, according to myself, according to my knowledge, because I'm not a government guy, so I can't comment on that. But what we have felt is like when we have something that is belongs to our own place, then we know what kind of people is trying to do something wrong. So what we do, when you search something on our search engine, then we're not gonna let you search a wrong site. As you said, spam sites, you know that, right? We don't let spam sites to be on our search engine. So you tell me, like, we have took the initiative, but it needs your supports and the police and all these people, those who are sitting here,
I'm
talk
fully in
about those things,
support.
you know.
I'm fully in support of your initiatives for product lines which move towards this security, which could be, as you said, a protected browser, okay, or the
No, it's not
protected.
browser. No, 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 no. So browser is totally different from search engine, first of all.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Protected browser and protected search engine as different products. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now,
Uh-huh.
maybe I saw somewhere that on the messaging platform also you may have a solution which is
Yeah,
perhaps
yeah.
doing something. So you are trying to address the issues in certain things which are very much welcome. Now, what
Uh-huh.
and also you raise the issue of jurisdiction. We cannot solve the
Uh-huh.
jurisdiction overnight because it is an international
Mm,
a
mm,
legal issue.
mm,
And as Mr. Sanjay
mm,
Kumar said, in terms of certain cyber crimes, there is a different perception about crimes in India versus crimes elsewhere, particularly those related to this obscenity and other things are crimes here, which may not be crimes elsewhere. That problem is also there. Now, in the financial crimes, that is the reason why I am saying that we should ensure that the criminals don't fly off their money through Bitcoin like an email in a Proton email, go up,
mhm,
take it outside, and nobody gets a hang of it. Then we have to tell each of these banks that you are the intermediary and you have to be more careful. Now, if there is a complaint given to the bank, next 1 minute, that bank should contact the collecting bank and ensure that the ATM withdrawal of that recipient is blocked. Today, they don't do
mm,
that. Of course, many criminals are intelligent. They attack in the night, 11:30, 12:30. So by the time you come to know about the fraud, the money has been already
yeah.
taken. But suppose 25,000 is the limit for ATM. You have seen many phishing transactions in which 20, 25,000 transactions take place one after another in 2 minutes interval or 4 minutes interval. Now, when I see that, these are things which are which you might have also observed, that the phishing
Mhm,
robo actually once they get hold of the credentials, they just run it
mhm,
and in every interval of 2 minutes or 4 minutes, a transaction is
mhm,
done. It's all done for 25,000 because withdrawal will be easy for that. Now, this bank
mm,
server should immediately recognize, if not the first 25,000, the third 25,000 or fourth 25,000, it should know this is not a normal transaction. And technology has the power. Today we talk of artificial intelligence. This is not even the high level
mm,
of artificial intelligence. This is a very simple intelligence. And if a substantial amount of money is tried to be drawn from an account which had 10 lakhs of rupees and 9,99,500 or something is being withdrawn, that itself is an indication that this is a fraudulent transaction. The robo
mm,
itself should stop that transaction even after 1 minute or 2 minutes by the time the money would have even gone out. But the other end, money has to be withdrawn through a bank account. I am talking of if the bank transactions are restricted to India, if you don't allow the Bitcoin kind of transactions, it has to go from here to State Bank of India, say Lucknow or somewhere, and that person has to go to the ATM and withdraw. Half an hour or 45 minutes is required for that. Within that half an hour, 45 minutes, without waiting for somebody to go to the police, make a complaint, and then the police say within 1 hour, I will try to block this. It should be done by the software itself, the banking server itself. It should actually stop this transaction or put it in a suspicion list, and then give time for the victim to approach the police next day or something like that, and the police to take at least 1 or 2 hours to record the complaint and then do something on that. So that is where our adaptive authentication systems in banks and financial these things are not doing it. We have actually, I have been working with somebody to introduce a pre-authentication system which uses this consent kind of a mechanism, that every financial transaction you take a new consent. Don't just say that because password is correct, I will pass the transaction. It is like if a thief has got my locker key, he goes to the bank will not allow him to open the locker, even though he has got the key. Same way, this bank password should be considered as one of the credentials, but not the only credential. So bank cannot say, you gave away the password, therefore you are responsible. That is not a good way of thinking. Of course, RBI has already issued the zero liability circular, which again, people may not know about it much. But zero liability circular means that in most of these cases, the bank has to reverse the transaction. So I'm not commenting on your products. These products are required.
No. I mean, see, even if you're saying about the financial transaction, that is also related to somewhere around like related to the identity theft. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, it is true. It is. It is.
I'm trying to say. So if you're gonna blame on one institution, it's not going to help.
What I'm saying is, even if my password is stolen, bank should have an authentication mechanism, not to allow any Tom, Dick, and Harry who comes and says, I am Vijay Shankar, I want to open the bank locker.
But as you know, like there is a 3D secure facility already there. So once you are offering 3D secure, hello.
Okay, I'm able to hear you. Okay, OTP is there. Now OTP has been compromised because of SIM cloning. Okay, so we keep doing. Of course, OTP is better than what was there earlier. At least now you have got one more channel to be compromised before I'm losing. Fine, it is good. Now beyond that, every time we have to keep on hardening the security at the server side, and the artificial intelligence have to be applied on making an assessment on what kind of transaction is there. Okay, how does a person who is a resident in Bangalore is trying to withdraw 1 lakh of rupees from, say, Varanasi or something like that? Has he really gone there for a pilgrimage? If he has gone there, it's fine, but that is what has to be checked. So in such cases, immediately you have to identify the risk potential of a particular transaction, which can be effectively done by a good software. I'm talking of authentication softwares. I don't know whether you are in that business or not. I'm talking of authentication.
We are working on it. We are working on that side as well.
Yeah. So there, immediate action should be generated. See, in the case of, as I told you, I was an ex-banker. When in the case of drafts, we sometimes used to have this kind of a situation, or sometimes stop payment instruction. A customer issues a stop payment instruction over phone. So technically we say that you have to give it in writing, but I will exercise caution. Bankers exercise caution where they will hold the payment without refusing to pay. See, there is a difference between returning a check or holding it and say, please present again tomorrow. That is the exercising caution. Now this AI-based authentication software can very well generate instructions directly to the recipient bank and give instructions to the recipient bank. There is a suspicion here. One alert has been raised to the customer. This is an alert to the recipient bank, and please ensure that your ATM does not dispense with money until the morning, say 11 o'clock or something like that, when the bank opens. This can be done by the authentication software, which today is not being done. That is where I am saying that software people and the bankers should be pushed to take such action. It may cost more, it may require more efforts, all that is fine. But from the point of view of protecting the innocent victim who has been actually forced to go for digitization, say my father or your father might not be interested in this digital this thing. I may be interested, you may be interested. We are going after convenience, but there are many people who love to have the face-to-face interaction with the customer, and the system we are forcing on them. While forcing it, we have to protect their interest. So that is the responsibility cast on us as responsible members of the society. I'm including myself with you. When I say that you have to make intermediaries liable, I'm saying that it is like just make them more responsible. That is the idea. Okay.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
agree with
Thank
you.
you, sir. We would now like to move on to Kunal Circle, sir, to speak on this topic.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I'll just take say five minutes because a lot of background has been said. Very good evening to all the panelists, to the organizers, to Karan.
Thank you for coming.
From a context of edtech, just to understand that India is the second biggest globally, around a 3-4 billion market, and privacy basically, through my experience as working in this field for about 9 years now, there are a couple of experiences that I've had which show vulnerabilities in this sector. Number one is, and this is in context of the IT law, the IT rules that were framed in 21, and the Personal Data Protection Bill, which was in 2019. So the first issue is the privacy policies. I have gone through the privacy policies. I have drafted them for the largest of startups. We have done it for Vedantu also. What I've realized is people really don't understand what a privacy policy is. It's not really about data privacy. It's about data collection, storage, processing, using, monetization, and none of them have a privacy policy that addresses all of this. Most of them are very ambiguous and very indecisive. And therefore, tomorrow, if a customer has an issue, the only place he can knock is court because there is no law presently. So there is the only remedy is constitutional remedy under fundamental rights and all of that, which nobody pursues. It's very very tough to pursue. The second issue is the responsibility of content and the responsibility of anything that's generated on the platform is placed on the user. So since we have Mr. Sanjay here, I think this is, when it comes to burden of proof in all crimes, you cannot put it on children who are recipients of edtech industry. A person who is not able to give consent to use a platform cannot be held liable for the content generated on the platform. And therefore, consent becomes very crucial here, which is going to be my next point, that there has to be a mechanism which takes, archives, and processes guardian or parental consent. Without that, the child cannot be held responsible. Two very big fiascos that happened. I think it was referred earlier, An Academy and Scholera. You saw the kind of breach that happened and the repercussions of that breach, which goes to show that we need very specific laws for edtech itself, because everywhere, if you look at, everybody talks about the IT industry, pharma industry, and other such, BFSI industry, that they have sensitive data. But education has now proved to be as important and as, because imagine a medical report of a child being leaked or the financial status of the parents being leaked. It is one of the most personal informations, and it was leaked, it was sold on the dark web, and therefore those kind of security mechanisms need to come. Next is education. Does it come in public or private sector is again there is no clarity either from the legal standpoint or a Supreme Court standpoint, and therefore we very urgently need a judgment which clarifies that the data collected, is it private data which is responsibility of these private players, or is it public data for anybody to access, use, analyze. Jurisdiction issues, as we spoke, the jurisdiction issue has a very good solution. Like I also practice in the intellectual property law space, where India is a signatory to multiple treaties, the Madrid Treaty, Brussels Treaty, the trade related aspects of intellectual property, which sort of gives a universal, beautiful binding. I would say it's a persuasive binding, but it gives that. And therefore, if we are able to create a universal GDPR sort of a thing, I think these universal jurisdictional issues will go. Even today, like we send an extradition notice to a criminal who goes to a different country as a reciprocal arrangement, this reciprocal arrangement needs to be at scale with at least all the developed countries in place, and it will lead to these jurisdiction issues being out. One core thing that is a problem that I see in the PDP bill, especially, is that the government is exempting itself from the coverage, which is a bit, it can lead to a George Orwell 1984 scenario where everybody is regulated and protected, and the government uses this data in a different way. So, the government also needs to understand that data should be accessed only in aggregate fashion without really leaving out any kind of a individual traceability kind of an angle. So solution wise, if I have to talk about certain things, I would agree with the previous speakers who spoke about audits, who spoke about a regulatory body to be put in place, a proper policy, even if there is no law presently, a proper policy that comes out, which a private company sort of introduces, and then everybody sort of uses it. Because for most laws that are there in India, take the CSR law or the law around employee stock option, there were companies like Infosys, Wipro, and TCS who were doing this much before this was made into an actual legal statute. And therefore, a policy that, say, Byju's or somebody else makes will become industry standard and will be followed. But so far, I think there is just one group in the world which is into education tech, which is Pearson Group, which has come out with a fantastic policy around how data will be collected, stored, processed, the entire privacy angle. And I think that's a good start for educational institutions and edtech companies to show that they actually care about these things rather than just, lip service to all of this. So I think on a last solution is the data fiduciariness has to be placed not on the users, but the company has to take it. Data has to be deleted once it's used. It needs to be stored in such a fashion that you can only access aggregate data. A third parties user should be given constant access on whether to disallow data, like the Apple, the privacy ad where people can actually say that only when I'm using it, not after I use it. Those kind of mechanisms should be given, and all of this will work only when technology, law, spirit of the industry, all of them sort of work together. So overall, I think this would be my, so the last three things we need to really put in place is a mechanism to protect data once it's generated, to regulate data, and of course to govern data. If protect, regulate, and govern is done properly, all the people who are in enforcement, people who are lawyers, people who are policy makers, people who are into training, like the previous speaker, only then all of us can actually do something very meaningful around it. Then identity theft, cyberbullying, frauds, financial crime, user tracking, all these crimes and the new crimes, because criminals have always been very innovative. So for us, it is important that we are not reactive in terms of what we do, but are proactive. So I think I would conclude with that. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question for you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, today, when I am using any edutech app and something wrong has happened, some data breach has happened or data piracy has happened. So, what are the legal recourses I can take?
So, as you know, there is a very famous Latin maxim which says ignorantia non excusat, right? You can't plead ignorance of law. And most of us, even right from using Swiggy, Zomato to using Byju's and Vedantu, nobody reads the terms and conditions. You just click I agree. Like I think one of the speakers mentioned, it is like a reflex. You just want to enter it, get done, and get out. So, because of this kind of an attitude, most of them have very lopsided policy. So, today, if you go to the court, the only thing you can claim is on a contractual basis, you can say that this contract was lopsided, the contract was one sided, the contract was basically not fair. And if one person goes and does this, goes to the court, obtains a judgment, either from a high court or the Supreme Court, that judgment sort of becomes the framework and a precedent that all of us then will use that judgment and take an action against the company. But so far, there is not a single individual who has approached the court and done that hard work for any of us. So at the moment, if something wrong happens with you, you are bound by the policy that you have signed, even though it might be a very oppressive policy.
All right. Uh, I would now like to bring in the Karn over here to
Mhm.
close the session for us. And if you all have any questions, you may please go ahead.
Yeah.
Over to
So,
you, the Karn.
okay. Thank you everyone for first of all, because I mean every single time I'm listening to all of you, I'm getting the same kind of problem. Is like why things are not just getting in the direction where every single people have the queries, but we never thought of solutions. You know what I'm saying? So what we can offer today and what we are offering today is like the whole ecosystem. When I talk about, then it includes everything. You know what I'm trying to say? I know I'm not going to mention any company name, but the way you said already, like they give the permission by themselves, but they don't understand what they are offering. You know what I'm trying to say? What we do in R1 is like when you offering a permission or when you asking someone like when I say there is a three keywords that we are working on is like right to privacy, right to information, or right to freedom. Means like you have the freedom that you can get your data deleted any single moment you want. So when you use our browser or search engine, the same time when you use it, your whatever the cookies or history are gonna be deleted by themselves. Similarly, if you're using our e-commerce, then every single time you put in your debit card or credit card details, this gonna be self-destructed by themselves. You know what I'm trying to say? So your data is not going to be circulated somewhere else. If I'm not gonna keep a lot, how can you say that? I have to think of like how I'm gonna protecting you. You know what I'm trying to say? But if I'm gonna keep a lot of things together, then there is a chance of breaching and leakage. You know what I'm trying to say? And these things are happening every single time because of the situation where we are not having that kind of solution available in the market. Even as a Indian company, you know what I'm trying to say? In India, we need to have that kind of, like we talk about digital India and Atmanirbhar and all, but we are not thinking of like how we can become really Atmanirbhar. It's all about like when we have each and every product line that has to be, built and developed in there and has to be working from our own country like if you're running an infrastructure. So for example, when Mr. Sankar he was pointed out and you pointed, and the same thing Mr. Sanjay has pointed out, the same thing is about like when there is a leakage is happening because you take in data a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. You take in lots of things, but you don't know how to protect it. And when you don't know how to protect it, then there is a financial problem, there is a health problem, there is a students attendance problem. Everything is going to be happen. So we need to solve these things from the core values where we're talking about. We have to start from the core. So I'm trying to say, and that's the reason behind I came up with this vcrypt, because if we're gonna offer that, we all. I mean, I always say that uh, if I'm offering a product to you, but it doesn't mean that if you are a wrong person, I'm gonna be helping you. You know what I'm trying to say? So, for example, if someone is trying to affect someone, then it's our responsibility that we have to find out and what's the reason behind and support the other, government organization to get those people in the right situation. That's what I'm trying to say. So this has to be taken care by the company instead of even the law is coming or no. That's not our responsibility. I mean, that's not should be our concern. Our concern should be something that we have to take care of it by himself. That's what I'm trying to say. And this is the core values of ours. So I would say like, I mean, those concerns you guys are raising, we are onto it and we'll solve it ASAP. You know what I'm trying to say. So it's like it's all about like the way you guys are coming in, and I'm grateful that you guys are coming in and talking about these problems. So even I'm getting the whole idea where I have to work on it that can bring these problems in a way that we can solve it ASAP. You know what I'm trying to say. So I'm really grateful, and I am really grateful that you guys are here, and thank you so much for that. 100%. Hmm.
Thank you, Sanjay sir. Thank you, Kunal sir. And thank you, Navi sir, for being with us at such a short notice. Have a great day ahead. Thank you. We shall meet again another time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.